We're here on the Movement Matters podcast. My name is Mer Handaus. I'm your host, and today we have the pleasure of having our guest Ibrahim Keshta with us. Ibrahim is a wholesaler, and he's still very young, mashallah. He's gotten his foot in the door and built quite a name for himself, alhamdulillah. So Ibrahim, if you want to get into what you're up to on a day-to-day.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibrahim Keshta. First and foremost, I'm a full-time student at the University of Alberta currently. I'm in my fourth year of business. I also run a wholesale company, an automotive wholesale company. So it's basically, I sell vehicles to dealerships. So a lot of the time when you go into a dealership and you're looking for like a used car or whatever it is, obviously dealerships do get in like trade-ins and that kind of stuff to supply for their inventory, but a lot of the time they're short. So they look for wholesalers that purchase vehicles from wherever it may be. Maybe it's from a private sale or from other dealerships, from other wholesalers, whatever it may be. We sell those vehicles to dealerships to basically give them inventory to sell to normal people on the street. Alhamdulillah, I was able to start that company right at like December 31st, 2018, when I was still 18 years old. I've learned a lot throughout it, especially being able to balance just school and a business and basically facing the challenges of balancing the two.
Mashallah. And sorry, so you're saying you do school, you're pursuing a bachelor's degree?
Yeah, so I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree of business law. And alhamdulillah, just last week I wrote my LSAT. So inshallah, the long-term goal is to get into law school.
So is wholesaling then like your end goal? Is that what you want to stick with long term?
That's a good question because it sort of leads into what the passion of why I even started it. Right. And it came, everyone tells us like, oh, you have to have a passion, you have a passion. And honestly, it's not a must, but it sure does help. You know what I mean? Because I've always been passionate about cars. When I was, just like a lot of younger guys or whatever, I was the kid who would literally do anything to buy those little motorized cars. You know, you see at Toys R Us, like $500, your parents would never buy you them. You know what I mean? And I had all the car games and I even had like a little car set up with my Xbox and I was always into cars. So what it came down to, what sort of got me into selling cars was like I wanted my first car. So I was at 14 getting my learners. I was already thinking about turning 16 and having my first car. Mm-hmm. And funny thing is, I got my first car before I even got my license. It was so urgent. I'm like, hey, I have my learners. Let me just buy a car. You know what I mean? And my dad's like, no, you're too young. And at the time I was working at McDonald's. I was like 15 years old or whatever. And the passion came from like, hey man, like I don't want to ask my dad for the money for the car. You know what I mean? Why can't I go and do it? And then I saw the market behind, like I see some of the friends that I had that were older than me who were just flipping cars. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem that hard. Like how hard can it be? You just find cars or whatever. I know what a good deal is. You know what I mean? I always had that business sense. I was always good at saving money. So that's what sort of started the entire thing. I was just looking on Kijiji and just finding cars and reselling them for $200, $300, $400. I was just doing whatever I could to try to make a few $100 to eventually save up for my first car. And that I literally had my first car at like 15 without my parents even knowing. And I sold it before I even got home. You know what I mean? So like that was the sort of the beginning of where it all started. It started from that to me getting my first job at a dealership, which was like a dream of mine, just to work with dealerships. Then I realized I really didn't like the 9 to 9, the pinners, every Saturday you're working 12 hours, you're on the phone, you're whatever, you're on someone else's schedule, you're putting in all these hours just to like be working for somebody else. So that's when I realized that's not the part I wanted. I loved the selling the cars, but I also wanted to be independent. So that's what sort of the wholesale came into part where it's like, hey man, I could sell cars, but I can also run my business at the same time.
That's amazing, man. Honestly, so it sounds like you're a true grinder. You're like the grinder ever sense of the word. Yeah. And it's kind of cool. Like, you know, you said that a big part of your motivation was, why can't I do it? Why can't I do it? And I love that. If you want to elaborate on that.
A lot of people think like they set a limit as to what they think they're supposed to be doing at a certain age. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm still young. Why can't I just go have fun and go with my friends? Like I'm still young, when whatever, but these are your golden years. You know what I mean? Like you have no responsibility. You have, like, alhamdulillah, coming from a Muslim household, I know a lot of Arab households are like this. Your parents are not going to let you leave the house if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Unless you get married or whatever. So if you have this opportunity where you'll always have a roof over your head, food on your plate, you don't have any kids, you don't have a mortgage payment, you don't have anything. Like take the risk, take the leap. Why don't you try something that you wanted to try? Like what better time do you have than now? Like when I talk to my dad and stuff and pursuing business opportunities or whatever, he thinks of it as in a very different mentality than I do. I just think, hey, where can I take this? What can I do? He thinks of it as risk-wise. I have kids, I have a family, I have whatever. But for us, man, you're young. Like, take the risk. What's the worst that can happen? You know what I mean? You lose some money or whatever. You lose a few $1,000s. You're not on the street. That's my biggest advice, is just take the leap, try something new. Like for me, I only had $1,500, $2,000 to my name when I was like 15 years old. I put that all into a car. Honestly, I could have lost the money. You never know. I didn't know anything back then. I could have lost the money, like needed a transmission, needed a motor, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, like, what's the worst that can happen? That $2,000 ended up making me $3,000 or whatever, and it kept growing and growing and growing. But even if I went back to zero, like put in a few shifts at McDonald's, make that money back and try again. You know what I mean? That's how I always thought of it. These years are just so primed to be able to take an opportunity, take a risk. And you know what? You never know what pans out.
I'm refreshed to hear it. And I'll ask too is like, what inspired you to want to do law school?
So law school was something I thought of like since I was like probably grade 6 or 7. And honestly, it came from like, you know, teachers always tell you, oh my God, you're so good at arguing. Go be a lawyer or something. You know what I mean? Like that's what honestly what it came down to. Education was always a big part of my family. Hey, you gotta be educated, you gotta be educated, you gotta be educated, you gotta do more. What can you do? Or whatever, right? I did have a passion for law. I thought it was really intriguing, that way that you can make logical arguments, the way you can defend people, the entire lifestyle behind it. God, watch Suits, I'm not gonna admit it, and thought it was sick. Obviously it's not like that in real life, you know what I mean? But that's what motivated me. I thought it was like I honestly saw myself playing that role. When I envisioned it, I could see myself in the future. I could see myself putting a suit on every day and going to an office or whatever. When I got older, I realized I didn't like that as much, just because like working at a dealership, I realized just because you have a suit on and you have a cool place to work, it's not that enjoyable. You know what I mean? You have a boss telling you what to do 24/7, right? So I'm like, okay, I still want to go to school because my parents or whatever. And honestly, I do realize the benefits of school, but I don't want to just be an accountant or in finance or whatever. I thought, okay, the next best thing would, you know what? I really have a passion for law. So why don't I just do my business degree and go into law? And then after that, inshallah, I finish law school. If I'm a lawyer, my biggest thing would be opening my own practice so I can run my own business. Yes. But I've learned all this from running my business through school and realizing the freedom that comes. It's not even the money, it's honestly the freedom. You see so many people who do dentistry or med or whatever it is because of the money, and then you get through and you talk to these doctors, whatever, like, man, we don't even care about money. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have a passion for something, what's the whole point of doing it? Yeah. Like, you're living your whole life chasing a dollar.
Do you have guys coming up to you asking like, hey, how'd you do it? What are you up to? That kind of thing? Like,
a lot of the time people see the stuff that we do or whatever, and you know, when you grow and stuff and you see the cars that, alhamdulillah, we were able to buy, people look at that kind of stuff like, oh my God, like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? A lot of them like don't see what came from before. I was buying $500 car, $1,000 cars. Like till now, I'll still fly to BC and drive back in the same day. Like you're talking like 16, 17-hour days from waking up at 7 a.m. to catch a flight, or like 6 a.m. to catch a 7 a.m. flight, to fly there and then do your entire deal and drive back. You're talking about a 17, 18-hour day. Like I used to get 2 or 3 in the morning. You got to be willing to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Even if it's for minimal money in the beginning. And this is one of the biggest things, is finding a mentor. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to do the things I did or be where I am, alhamdulillah, today without that mentorship, because that mentorship saves you years and years and years of time, because they teach you the mistakes they already have made. You know what I mean? You don't fall into those same traps. You realize there's so many things that you could do differently, that without a mentor, you fall into these little traps that are just time sinks, that you waste your time, you get set back 2 years instead of moving forward. So if there's one big piece of advice, is being able to find someone who's a mentor to you, even if you're working for free. Like you can't, like the biggest thing, you just can't let the money be the prime motivation, because the joy of money just goes away. But the passion doesn't. If you have a passion for something, you'll end up loving it. You'll, like they always tell you, like, and it's so true, if you have a passion for something, you never work a day in your life. You always just hear that until, alhamdulillah, I'm able to do something I genuinely love. Like I love dealing with cars, that I actually don't feel like I'm working. Like I'll do that 17, 18-hour day, and I'll come home, I'll do it again tomorrow. It's not a big deal. I don't like, oh, I have work tomorrow. I love it. I get to drive cars that I love, you know what I mean? I get to meet really amazing people. I get to engage in business. I do it on my own schedule. So alhamdulillah, when I had my LSAT, this is like a balance of school and work. I had my LSAT, I was able to literally just stop working. I've established myself enough where I can still be making cash flow and be making money, because I have other people who are willing to put in that work, and it's just a text away. You can still cut off work and still make some money though, and focus on what I needed to focus on, which is writing my LSAT. But if you're working a 9 to 5, if you're working on somebody else's schedule, you don't have the luxury. If you have rent to pay, you have food to pay, you have insurance, you have your car payment, you can't just stop working, right? So you're not able to have that freedom, again, of being able to choose what you want to do.
With this law degree coming up, with your wholesaling, are you going to step away from wholesaling? Are you going to keep wholesaling continued, or is that an idea you've had?
The balance is the toughest part about doing all of it. The beauty of university is that you have 4 months off. 4 months is a long time. And the thing is about wholesale, anybody who's in the business knows the summer is the prime months. You know what I mean? Like 4 months of summer is honestly equal to 8 months of like winter and fall or whatever it is, because it just gets really busy in the summer. What I've done for the past 2 years is I really capitalize on those 4 months. You know what I mean? Right. I don't have school or whatever it may be. And even alhamdulillah, during COVID, it was online. It was easy. Like I barely felt like I was in school. I was working full time. Now that I'm done the LSAT, I have a really light load. I can work. I can work every day. Like I had class yesterday. Yeah, I was in Calgary yesterday, because I was able to, you know what I mean? Like I know what classes are really important, what classes are not that important, and I'm able to put my work into there. But I make sure my priority is that getting my good marks for school, and then if I'm able to make enough time I use the rest of my time for my business. It all comes down to time management. If you're able to manage your time and you're able to capitalize on your summer can cover basically the rest of the year, and the rest of the year just becomes that much easier.
But mashallah, it's good for you and good on you that you were able to actually come to this point now. But yeah, it is reality, right? People are gonna look and be like, oh.
Like you gotta watch who you surround yourself with, and you gotta watch out who knows your business. The reason why I'm involved in a group that has done well is because we all trust each other and we all go by these set of unwritten rules. Like, hey, like no posting your cars on Instagram that you get. You know what I mean? No showing off, no drive. Like we literally have a rule: don't drive on the north side. You know what I mean? Like because we just know there's so many people, so much ayn. You know what I mean? That you just can't, and you gotta just grind in silence. You know what I mean? You let success be your noise. You don't need anybody else's approval. If you're happy and your parents are happy with you and you're able to make your family happy or whatever it is, and you have your own goals, then you don't need other people's approval. My goal at the end of it is I want to be able to give back to this ummah. I want to be able to take care of my parents. I want to be able to, like, my dad to this day, I could tell how frugal he is and whatever it is because this is how he was raised. Money was the number one concern when they were growing up. Like, I'm from Gaza, you know what I mean? I was born there and my parents lived there, and my dad, I was 4 years old when I left, right? And then we moved to the States and then we came here. I saw the struggle that my dad had to go through when he was in school. We had no money, we had nothing. But I never felt like we were poor. That's the biggest thing about it. So that's what sort of taught me money isn't the end goal. My dad raised 4 kids on $1,000 a month. If you ask me or my brothers or my sister, nobody actually knew we were poor, except my dad. We learned at a young age, money wasn't the end goal. Money wasn't happiness. Money just, it was a tool just to get things done. From that, because of that experience that I went through, going through, seeing my dad mow lawns at 31 years old, you know what I mean? Delivering flyers, whatever it took to make ends meet, that's when I realized money is just a tool to get things done. So my passion behind selling cars, becoming a lawyer, whatever, sure, it's nice having money, you get to buy nice things or whatever, but to be able to give back to the ummah, to give back to the people who even got us here, to give back to my family, to my parents, and be able to buy them a beautiful house or do whatever they want and be like, you know what, money is your last concern. Like, this is not something you ever have to worry about again. You gotta find what that thing is that sort of motivates you and just run with it.
Everybody has mentors, everybody has those support systems, but for yourself, like, that's really, for you, that's like the main backbone to everything you did, alhamdulillah. So any final thoughts that you want to offer to anybody, young entrepreneur?
You got to be able to find a passion for something. And in the beginning, you might not make anything. You might even lose, and you might fail and fail and fail and fail. You got to be able to go through those failures in order to finally learn from them. You got to, like, every time you fail, you can't just be like, I guess I don't know how to do this. You got to be like, hey, what mistakes did I make? And from there is when you grow and grow and grow. But my biggest thing, if I had to give a piece of advice, would be trust. If you have trust with other people and they have trust in you, you grow like a family. You don't grow like a partnership. The group that we work with, I could literally transfer them my entire bank account tomorrow morning and I would not lose a second of sleep because I have so much trust in them as if they're my own family. So you have to be, because you learn in business, there's a lot of people you just can't trust. There's a lot of people who are willing to screw you over for $1. You know what I mean? They would look, what we say, like, they'll cut your neck over a nickel. You got to be able to find people that you trust, and through that, you're working as a 2-man, 3-man, 4-man team instead of working by yourself, right? You're able to, like, if they need help, you help them out. If you need help, they help you out. You go back and forth. It's through that trust that you're ever able to accomplish something big. If you're by yourself, you can only go so far. You know what I mean? If you think you're a macho man and you're gonna do everything yourself, you're not. That'd be one of my biggest pieces of advice, is find the people that you can trust and find something that you're passionate about and go through it without even the thought of money. And inshallah, once you get good enough at something and you're passionate about, like, if you're passionate about something for long enough, you'll be good eventually. You know what I mean? And when you're good at something is when someone will pay you for it.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you, grant you sustenance, grant you happiness, contentness, and everything you're doing. If you want to turn and tell the viewers where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Ibrahim.Keshta. And if you do have any questions about business or even getting involved in wholesale or whatever, maybe any questions at all, contact me. Inshallah khair, and really great meeting you. I'm excited that you guys had me on the show.